And then there were two. The historic field of candidates in the race for Boston mayor is down to City Councilors Michelle Wu and Annissa Essaibi George, and neither wasted a minute in transitioning to the general election in November.
This is about a choice for our future.
That's right. Yep.
This is a choice about whether City Hall tackles our biggest challenges with bold solutions, or we nibble around the edges of the status quo.
I'm not quite sure who the status quo candidate is. It's not me. We can say whatever we want about the challenges we face as a city, but unless it's followed up with an action plan, with the work and with the rolling up of the sleeves and doing it, it's really not that bold.
Wu was the first to declare victory and the top vote getter with a third of yesterday's pathetically low turnout. But the race for second was a close one, with acting Mayor Kim Janey, City Councilor Andrea Campbell both trailing just a few points behind Essaibi George. In a statement early this morning, Janey conceded the race, celebrated the historic nature of her campaign, as well as her time as acting mayor. She wrote, quote, "At City Hall, as the first woman and first black mayor of Boston, we not only made history, but we made a difference." And in her concession speech, Andrea Campbell focused not on her loss, but on a greater win.
The real winner tonight was actually black women. Collectively, our vote shares surpassed all others. And what that shows is that there is an appetite indeed in this city for change, and I know my candidacy helped ignite it, and I'm proud of that.
Joining me to discuss are former state senators Dorcena Forry and Dianne Wilkerson, the latter of whom led an initiative called Wakanda 2, which was aimed at encouraging black voters to coalesce around one candidate. Senators, both, it's good to see both of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Jim.
Senator Dorcena Forry, let me start with you. A quick reaction. What was your takeaway from last night?
I would say my takeaway first is how amazing, right, that we're ending the finalists with two women, two people of color to be the next mayor of Boston. That's incredible when you think of other metropolitan cities that have had people of color repping them as mayor for a while now. And so, that's exciting, right? And I think now as a woman, as a person of color myself, it's no doubt with all the campaigns, this has been a hard-fought fight. And for those who stood with Andrea, Kim, and John, collectively, they have 43% of the vote that turned out last night. So now the campaign begins again, where these two candidates have to make the case in terms of the Black, the Latinx, the immigrant community, and why should they be with them.
So you think after 200 years, it was time for a change from a white guy leading the city? I think that's about time. Senator Wilkerson, what was your reaction to last night's results?
I think it was the same. I mean, no matter what happens, we are about to turn a corner in Boston, and we'll be in a very new place. I was at the same time very much saddened by the fact that we did not have a black candidate moving into the final. Because I think there's just more at stake than there has ever been, given the last 20 months for black residents of Boston. And certainly I would say we always move lockstep with our Latino brothers and sisters. And so we've been in the very same place. So that's that. And then we ended up with two candidates, really neither of which made a major pitch of their campaign addressing this population that has been so marginalized, so hampered, really vulnerable in the last 20 months, certainly in COVID. But we started off, and I said we were circling the drain in March of 2020, and it didn't get any better in the last 20 months.
Senator Wilkerson, let me stay with you for a minute. Renee Graham tweeted today the following: with 3 black candidates in a 5-person race, the question was often asked, is Boston ready to elect a black mayor? On Tuesday, Boston answered, as only Boston would, no. Is she right?
I think it is. When you say, is Boston ready? And the answer being no, I think she's right. But I don't think that the interpretation is that she was only talking to white Boston.
Well, but
I don't think that the black community was ready either.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I want to quote your colleague here, Senator Dorcena Forry. The percentage of people in this election who voted for one of the three black candidates was quite large, was 40-something%. And had your effort at Wakanda 2 been successful, which obviously was not, there was not unifying behind one candidate, one black candidate, I'm assuming you believe that a black woman would be in this final. Do you not, Senator Wilkerson?
I don't, and that's
Why not?
because I'm looking at your numbers. So what the numbers suggest, and I think we're going to see this borne out over the next 2 days, 2 or 3 days, is that the black community was overwhelmingly supportive of Kim Janey. And so had there been no discussion of Wakanda, it would have been a whole lot different. There's no question. But people heard what we said. And so being ready means that you're prepared to do the strategy. It's not just the numbers. I always say this, if all you needed was a majority, apartheid would never have lasted as long. What they didn't have was a strategy. It's not just about having the majority.
Senator Dorcena, Forry, what's your reaction? What do you make of the fact? What did the voters of Boston say by not sending one of the three black candidates into the final?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think Boston is ready, right? In this day and time, there were 6 candidates of color for the preliminary, right? One dropped out, so it was 5.
John Santiago.
Then we were left, with Santiago, but there were 3 black African Americans in the race, and I think we are ready for it. And so when you see, it's really about mobilization, it's about campaign, it's about identifying the votes. Dianne, you know this, right? And making sure we're able to turn people out. I mean, when you see the turnout, it's kind of the same percentage from 2013, when since that time we've had and since that time we've had 100,000 new voters added to the rolls. That's a problem, right? And so I think that it is a moment where, yes, it's wonderful. We have 2 women, we have women of color, but it would have been nice, no doubt about it, as a black woman who's sitting here, to see a black person, an African American, in the final. But it's still a joyous moment because in this time, there is no white male that's going to be mayor, right? Yeah, and I say that because we've come a long way. But there's still a lot of work to do. As Diane's saying about strategy, these are grown-ups, okay, Jim? Grown-ups, they had a campaign, they had a team. People came to me for advice before running, and I was real. I gave it real, right, in terms of my ideas, whether they should run or not, and people made decisions to run. And so, I think that's also important. These are folks who have made the decision, they're in the race, and this is where we are.
So I want to pick up on what both of you said, staying on this topic, starting with you, Senator Dorcena, Forry. What is the strategy takeaway from this to make it more likely down the road that we do see a black candidate in the final, that we do see a black mayor of Boston? What did we learn from last night that should guide black candidates and their supporters down the line?
Yeah, I will say, first of all, it would be great to dive into the numbers, right? As we said, the numbers are not quite fully out yet in terms of the districts and the areas around the city and where people got the votes. But there were coalitions, for these black candidates too. It wasn't just the black community that propelled Andrea's 19.7% or Kim's 19.4% or John's 3%, right? There was a coalition of white and Latinx and other folks, Asians, who were with them too. And I think what it says is that although people are ready, I think, for a Black/African-American mayor, we know that the numbers are also important, right? I mean, it is in terms of, the dilution sometimes that may happen. But that's something we have to think about. But again, it is an incredible moment now because there's 2 candidates, as Dianne said, who did not specifically address issues that are impacting the Black, African-American, immigrant, communities and Latin communities. And this is a time to really have them share their vision. What is it going to look like? What are the issues that they're going to be carrying? And more importantly, what is the makeup of their cabinet going to look like, right? Is it going to be reflective of our city of Boston?
Senator Wilkerson, how do you explain the abysmal turnout? One of you a minute ago referenced 2013. That turnout was low then. It was higher than yesterday with, I would argue, one of the most impressive fields of candidates for mayor that I've seen anywhere in a long time. How do you explain the pathetic turnout in this city?
Well, first, I don't call 30% pathetic. Let me just say, in terms of mayor races, I don't. In fact, in terms of races, I don't call 30%. I was actually surprised that I didn't think we were going to hit that, by the way. I predicted 22% because we cannot underestimate and undercount the impact of what is happening. And COVID is real. There were 2 funerals yesterday of young people who died in our community of COVID. Jim. So it's very real. That's number one. I think number 2 is that there's some other things that we're not talking about here. I actually think that that certainly, Secretary Galvin predicted 25 because they saw what we saw. Not a whole lot of energy, not a whole lot of people out. These were very good candidates. You were right about the field. But you got to think about. I have 2 other things I want to add to the mix.
Please.
One, you are one of the exceptions in the number of times you've had talked about this race. But I do think that for the media at large to sit back and say, oh, what happened? When they spent the last 5 months, in the most vicious attack of the incumbent mayor from day one, then the major daily endorsed the Black woman candidate and never wrote another good article about her, then wrote 4 weeks of daily articles about Michelle Wu, right? Let's talk about our
with all due
community.
respect, Senator Wilkerson, every single day since that editorial in the Globe for Andrea Campbell was published, every single day, it was at or near the top of the website, which is how most of us read the Boston Globe. It was there a lot.
Then we're not talking about the same thing. I'm talking about the ink, the articles that were written. I'm not talking about you, as I said. It was it's been written about. We talked a lot about it on social media. We're saying, what do they think we're stupid? If they're endorsing Andrea, why are they writing articles about Michelle every day? And that's not about Michelle. What I'm saying to you is that in this time, 2 years, all the conversation about racial reckoning, right? Justice, equity. You see the number of funds. Corporate community has jumped in. Yeah. All the Black Lives Matter signs. Yeah. They gave all their money to not a Black candidate, right? So you have to add it all up. The Latino community was amazing, and I don't want to miss that. They jumped out there and really dug in and supporting the incumbent mayor, right? We had our own Black elected officials who sat this out. I've never seen that before, right?
Senator,
so it's not missed.
I want to bring up.
Part of it.
We're fairly short on time. Linda Dorcena Forry, starting with you quickly, if we can. What is the choice? How would you characterize the choice that voters face in November?
Well, first, I just want to say this, just to piggyback on Dianne really quick, I'll be fast, is that, Acting Mayor Kim Janey, I served on a co-chair of her transition team, and I think she's done a good job managing the city in this time frame, right? But we have to be honest, Kim was not a candidate for mayor until after becoming acting mayor, right? You had 2 candidates who came out already. One was a Black African-American woman and Michelle Wu. You know what I mean? So that's important to say. So
we got to get back to this. What's the choice quickly are people facing in November? Yeah, quickly if you can, please.
I'll just say this, this is the time where Michelle and Annissa have to share their vision. And this is really important because we know it is the community, and their communities of color too, yes, but in particular, the Black and Latinx community, this is where the vote is at. And the Cape Verdean community, as I think of John Barros, right? And so this is a preliminary, we know in the preliminary, many issues came up: equity, access, progressive values, housing affordability, and how do we bring historically excluded groups, in particular Black and brown folks that's been left behind for so long, that they have a seat at the table. It's going to be important that they voice that, their vision and their strategy, and how we're going to get there.
Senator Wilkerson, you have the last 30 seconds. What's the choice voters are facing on November 2nd?
Ditto. These 2 candidates are going to be pressed. We've heard from both camps today, right? They're calling, which is what they should do. But I said earlier, no one's going to get elected mayor without dominating the vote in the Black community. That hasn't changed. In fact, it's even more focused now. Ask Menino, if you could. Ask, Marty Walsh, if you could. So the reality is that we are still very much in Wakanda mode. We're going to be meeting with them. but we're meeting first on Thursday this week, because this is going to happen fast. We will have a list of things we're looking for. It won't be enough for them to say, trust me, right? Because neither has, but one of them is going to be mayor. And I will guarantee you it's going to be one who's going to have to put some real commitment, not the wink and the nod. What Senator Dorcena Forry talked about is a real plan that gets laid out. That's what you're going to see. And the person who's able to do that best is going to be the next mayor of the city of Boston.
Okay, well, trust
And
me,
it's exciting
you'll both be
times.
back.
That's all I'm going to say.
Senators Wilkerson, Dorcena Forry, it's good to see you both. Thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
This Friday at 7, join Adam Riley, the GBH News political team, and New York Times New England bureau chief Ellen Barry, among others, as they explore the Boston mayoral race in the context of the city's fraught racial history with the eyes of the nation upon us. In Boston's Race into History, that's this Friday at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.